everybody. It's 3 o'clock, Friday, May 15th, so this must be Hands-on Science, and I'm Miss Gail, coming to you from Cononicut Island. Whoa! I'm hoping lots and lots of my friends are here today, and I miss you guys so much. I really wish I could see your faces. If you can, let me know that you're here in the comment chat box. Just give me a wave or type in your name and let me know that you're here. I'm going to be talking, pretending in my head like I know that you're out there. So I'm going to say hello to Chloe and hello Kenny and hi Elsie. Hello Leslie. Thank you all for being here with me today. So on the island, it is warm, it is sunny, and the groundhog that lives underneath my shed has come out to say hello. And my 2 housebound cats are pretty excited about that. But enough about what's happening here right now. Let's think about the other activities that you've done on Hands-on Science. A couple weeks ago, Martha and you planted seeds. And let's think about it. What did you need for those seeds to grow? 3 things I'm thinking of. Can anybody give me an idea? So you needed to have plenty of air, earth, sunshine, and water, right? And those flowers that you pressed with Elise last week? You needed water to make those grow, right? And Nancy, when she was testing different objects to see if they would sink or float, it wasn't water, right? Well, I'm going to try and link to the 3 previous sessions with a visit to a unique habitat here on Cononicut Island. Jamestown makes up most of the island, but there's a lot of other things to see too. First of all, what is an island? Can you tell me what an island is? Who knows what an island is? Come on. Chloe, how about you? That's right. An island is a piece of land that is surrounded by water. Cononicut Island is the 2nd largest island in the Narragansett Bay. Now, if it's an island and I'm here, how do I get to work every day? Do I take the ferry from Newport to Providence and a bus and a train? Nope. Do I swim? I'm not that good a swimmer. There are 2 bridges that connect the island to the mainland, but we haven't had them for that long. When you come down from Cranston, you're going to cross over the Jamestown-Verrazano Bridge, and if you were over on Aquidneck Island, you'd come across the Newport Pell Bridge. Actually, Cononicut Island was the seasonal home of the Narragansett tribe when the settlers were first here. It was actually named after their chief, Canonicus. Canonicus and the entire tribe really depended upon many of the same plants and animals that we're going to be talking about today. So try and remember that. Cononicut Island is named after Canonicus, the Narragansett chief. This was a seasonal home for the tribe. But where are we going to go today? I'm going to take you from Cranston and you cross over the bridge. You come onto the island and there's a wonderful windmill to look at when you visit. The glass blower, there are some organic farms, and then right here in the middle, there is this unique ecosystem that we're so fortunate to have in Rhode Island that you have probably seen. But I want to get into it a little bit more and talk about it. This area that's protected by a harbor and a cove, has two different kinds of water. Can you think of what they are? I know that you know one of them, okay? So yeah, one of them is the Narragansett Bay. But then there's a freshwater creek called the Great Creek right in the middle there. So that fresh water is meeting salt water, and when that happens, the water is called brackish, okay? So we've got an estuary, that's another name for the creek here, meeting the Narragansett Bay, and this area is affected by the pull of the tides. Tides are pretty complicated, and I didn't plan on going into them too much with you today. But I think we all know that when you go to the beach, the water can come up and cover it, and that's called high tide, and then it pulls back out, and there's so much more beach to be on, and that's called low tide. Those three things, the estuary, the salt water, and the pull of the tides, makes up this habitat for some plants and animals that we don't think about every day. Probably the most important is the cordgrass that you might see. This is what cordgrass looks like, and I was thinking maybe if you saw this picture and closed your eyes, you could think about a time you drove by an area that looked like that. Can you think of a time that looked like that? Cordgrass is also called Spartina. And what's really cool about it is at the bottom, remember it's called cordgrass, and this might help you remember it. It's very thick right here at the bottom. I want to say that it looks like bamboo, but if a bamboo expert was watching, I'd get some negative response. But I want you to know that it's very strong and thick at the bottom. And it's got roots that go down very deeply into the soil and the sand. And it can grow to 8 or 9 feet, which is taller than the room that I'm standing in, and it's very flexible at the top. So it's strong at the bottom, and you'll learn more why, and it's flexible at the top. That way, it can take the kind of wind that happens along coasts, okay? So the grass is 2 different colors. Maybe you would think of it as 3 throughout the year. You can look at it and it would be this color in the first photograph, really sort of this yellowish pale color. And then it will come into this more vibrant green color. When do you think those changes happen? What do you think? You know a little bit about photosynthesis and how much plants and flowers depend on the sun. When do we get the most sun? That's right, we get it in the summertime. So when you drive to the beach is probably the time that you're going to see a salt marsh like this one called marsh meadows, okay? The Spartina, or the cordgrass, is home to the periwinkle. Can you see this? I bet you guys know these. Maybe you've been to other places in Rhode Island where you've been able to pick these off. And so now you see the beginning of a cycle. We've got the Spartina that's firmly implanted so that it's strong and stays in place. And now we've got the animals that are on it. I don't think you can read this. I can't. This says periwinkle or winkle, and that means snail. So when it's low tide, the periwinkle can be at the bottom of the grass and get its nutrients, and then when it's high tide, it'll slowly crawl up the grass to be safe from all the water that's coming in. Now, who else relies on the Spartina or the cordgrass? Oysters. Can you picture what an oyster looks like? I have this photograph. So the oysters are all clustered or clumped right here against the grass. Oysters is one thing that the Narragansett were very good shell fishermen. The oysters like to grow against something tough. So you'll find an oyster on rocks, and then they clump one on top of the other. And they will also do this within the cordgrass. You see how they're all clumpy? Now, can you tell in this photograph whether or not it's low tide or high tide? It's low tide. If it was high tide, those oysters would be covered. High and low tide happens twice a day. So that means throughout the day, there's going to be time where the land is completely overwhelmed by the water. Then the low tide, as it recedes, more ground is going to be present. So you're going to have different kinds of animals coming out at different times of the day. The periwinkle and the oysters are there all of the time. Some of the times you can see them, some of the times you can't. Low tide, we could see the oysters. You can see the periwinkles at high tide when they're up above. Okay, so a couple of the other kinds of animals that I wanted to talk to you about were the birds. Oh my gosh, we are so lucky with birds here on the island. The one thing I really wanted to not forget to tell you about is the Raptor Cam, because we've talked about birds a lot this past year at the library and our different programmings, and we have an osprey webcam, and the nest is in Marshmallow. I always want to call it Marshmallow. That's pretty funny. Marshmeadow. So if you're coming down this road, the camera's right about there. Do you remember what their nest looks like? They're sort of this incredible woven basket. Instead of straw, it's made out of significant sticks, and they come back year after year to look at it. Other animals that other birds that we have are the heron. And then I thought maybe you guys might remember about seeing an egret or a cormorant. It's a beautiful birding area, but you know why they're there? They're there because it's easy pickings for their fish. Because you see, this is a protected shallow area where baby fish are growing up. Larger fish need to get out of here and into the bay, but the babies are right there. So, some other animals that you might enjoy hearing about. When the water pulls out, animals that you think of right in your own backyard are there. I've seen deer out there. I've seen raccoons out there. And that would be at low tide because it's rich in a mineral deposit when the land is exposed. You know that deer like salt licks. They like salt, so they like areas where there's a mineral deposit. That's a time when you're going to see crabs too, blue crabs, fiddler crabs, and they're out looking for food themselves. But as soon as the tide changes and the water comes in, you may have seen they have to dig really quickly to make a hole and plug it up with mud and sand. Who else do we have? Besides the oysters, there are other what they're called bivalves. They open and close. You could find mussels and clams. It's, as I said, as I've been trying to explain, it's a dynamic habitat. So some of the words that I used were ecosystem, estuary, tides, and brackish. I've given you a lot of information, and I know normally we would take a break and do something based on these and then come back and keep going, like write down ecosystem. ECOSYSTEM if you have paper and pencil. And then see how many words you can make out of ecosystem. Just real quickly, I see that it could be system, I see stem, I see mets, but I only have a certain amount of time and memory, so I'm going to keep going. The reason why I wanted to talk to you about the salt marsh, the salt water, was to talk about whether or not plants can live in salt water. And this research that we've done, I think we've come up with an answer. If you watered your seeds that you planted with Miss Martha, watered them with salt water, would they grow? No. The blooms that you picked in order to press, would they grow had they been watered with salt water? No. Does Spartina grow in salt water? Yes, it does. And the reason why Spartina grows in salt water is because it has special glands that secrete the salt out so that they can survive and do their job in the salt marsh. I hope I've demonstrated what a unique system this is. But back to freshwater and saltwater. This is freshwater. Remember Nancy had the water that she was trying to see if it would sink or float? I've got an egg here, a brown egg, so it'll show up well. When I drop this in here, do you think it's going to sink or float? I'm going to look and see if any. Let's see. Okay, what do you think? Ah! Did I lose an egg? That sunk. It didn't float. I've got one with some salt in it. I'm going to give that a stir and drop an egg in here. Up! It's floating! Yay! It worked. I always love it when it works. So, as Nancy demonstrated, it depends on density, and the density of the salt water allows the egg to float. So, for next week, when you watch, I want you to comment in the chat box, how much salt do you need to add to 1 glass of water for an egg to float? How much salt do you need to add to 1 cup of water for an egg to float? We'll see you again for Hands on Science. Thanks, everybody.